definitely. I think we are really similar. I remember even when Chloe was doing that, remember you were doing that Woody Allen movie back in the day? Mm-hmm. And I remember like coming over and running lines with you for it, or you came over to my house. We've sort of had like a long history. I think we're both very like regimented about knowing every single line as written, and almost my feeling is that way also it frees you up to like play with it. I think, right? That way it's sort of, if something spontaneous happens, you have more freedom to be in the moment because you're not searching.
Plus we've also been in it long enough that we know how frustrating it is when your co-star doesn't know their lines.
Yeah.
And so we are always want to like, at least, I want to be punctual, I want to know my lines, and that's like the most respectful thing you can do for your co-stars.
How did you celebrate getting into Sundance?
There's a lot of, texting.
No better way to celebrate than text messaging. Everybody knows that.
I know, and they called and like, we
were pretty excited about it actually, because I think it was, it's a wild movie. In a weird way, that's like, maybe, it's not the question that stumped us, but that is what's interesting to talk about is, it's definitely not talking about a traditional movie. I think we've, both been in a fair amount of movies that are more straight ahead, and I think we're in other movies here that are more straight ahead. But this one is so weird and sort of more like an art film in a way than it is anything else. And also, I guess because it's in the midnight section, it's sort of, people assume it's horror because of the name, and sort of, so I think sort of trying to explain that and be like, hey, listen, it's sort of intentionally more of a cult film.
Yoga Hosers, your other film, isn't horror at all either.
Yoga Hosers is another weirdo movie.
Is there more pressure when you're producing as well?
I mean, as far as like my producing on this movie, I think it's more about how much I care about Danny and sort of respect him as a filmmaker and really like believe wholeheartedly that this is what he should be doing for a living. It's what he's born to do. And I think Chloe and I both feel that way very strongly, and that's why we sort of signed on at like, and we were kind of like, whatever you want to do, Danny. He wrote the parts for us. And so I think as a producer, really what that means to me is it's very much about Danny sort of like getting his voice out there and getting his movie made, and so it was more like just introducing him to people and that kind of thing. So my my stress level is more about like I really fucking want it to happen for him, and which
is why it was so great to get into Sundance, because it is a great platform, and there's so much attention on the movie, and the Sundance is a nice festival because it really is about the independent movies and not the big studio pictures coming in and sweeping up all the press. Yeah. So it's nice to be here with it.
What is the biggest difference between like your acting styles?
She has an assistant that helps her run her lines, and I that's the biggest difference.
Oh, on set, on this movie, I did actually. They had.
She had a lot more dialogue, so she had an assistant. Yeah. And that was the kind of the biggest difference in our preparation.
Yeah, I guess that was true. I sort of forgot because I don't usually have an assistant in my real life. But
well, you're also a producer. You need an assistant.
Yeah, so I guess because of that, I had a. And because of Root Beer, the dog, who needs constant attendance. She's a very high maintenance animal. She's a very entitled little creature. And you know what? She's right to be that way.
So can you take me back to like your 20s in New York, living in a studio, and just what that time was like, maybe before your big breaks?
I owned this apartment on 16th and 3rd. Chloe actually took it over for a while. She like subletted it from me. When I lived there, it was just, a little studio. When she lived there, it was like a gorgeous hotel room that you want to move into.
Yeah, we both had success pretty early. Yeah, I mean, my first film that hit was Kids, and it made quite a splash, and I was 19, so, but there was a lot of years of struggling and living check to check and all of that, and until I started working in television, really, I wasn't making enough money. I literally lived check to check, and, and when you're young and in the city, it's poses challenges, but also fun, exciting, and
What do you do if you're feeling uninspired?
Try to force inspiration is often difficult. I mean, I feel like going to the movies or even checking out or, engaging or checking out, kind of both can inspire, I think,
Yeah. It is important, I think, probably what I'm assuming Chloe means by checking out is, like, you need time to sort of recover and recalibrate and take yourself out of the whole dance for a second and just sort of like be quiet in a cave to sort of get back in touch with like your basic nature without all the elements stimulating you and stimulating insecurities in a weird way, like and self-doubt. Like you need to just sort of get quiet and remember who you are, and often that can even be like we have a really core group of pals, and even just doing that you know, like taking it easy with friends.
We also live in New York, so I think it gives us a healthy perspective, and you know, we have a lot of we have a lot of friends that are in a lot of different industries, so we're not always wrapped up in the movie industry, and like when we're going back to back on films and our shows and then press, and then you can get really run down really easily, and so it's nice to be able to like go into our friend's world, go to your friend's concert and like support her and like be in her world for a minute, or like an artist having an opening, and just like keeping it all into perspective, but also being inspired by our friends and stuff.
The subway, we love the subway.
Love
for
the
that.
subway.
I think that it is like a grounding thing to just like walk down the steps of the train, kind of like zone out. You know, remember that you're just such a, you know, tiny piece in a massive city that has so many other swirling elements happening. It's helpful to be able to, you know, remember how like it just basically people watching, like remember what it's like to be like how real people sit that aren't thinking about being observed, you know, like the object under observation really changes. And I think that's probably the biggest difference between LA and New York, is you can feel that everybody feels a little bit like maybe somebody's watching me in LA, and you don't, I mean, the subway is like a real place of, it's jam-packed with people, but nobody's acting like people are looking at them. So it's like a very safe space, I think.
If you could have a drink with anyone and they could be dead or alive.
I mean, I always feel like I go the sentimental route where I'd like to have had or met or have a drink with my grandmother, my mother's mother, who I never met. She died before I was born, and she was a really eccentric lady, and she had a black cat called Lucifer. She chain smoked. She wore like big like bracelets up to here. She was a real kind of like bohemian, which is weird because my mom is so square.
Where would you want it to take place?
I think probably like in her living room, which you know, I used to go to it was then just my grandfather, my aunt lived there, and she had this beautiful round table and the chandelier that now I have in my apartment in New York, and they had a gas stove, and now whenever I smell the gas stove, I always remember that house. And it was above the butcher shop where my grandpa was a butcher, and it's just like this weird like memory I have of being young and in Philadelphia in this beautiful old building with this staircase, and like, so to go back there and meet with her would probably be my dream.
I love it. Great answer.
Sorry, so sentimental.
I don't know. I mean, immediately my brain goes to just sort of like various idols I would like obsess on as a teenager, you know, and really like, you know, guys like Cassavetes or like Lenny Bruce or even like Aleister Crowley, or like people that really shaped me as a teenager. And
what's the best drink that you've ever had? Like,
these are tough questions. I mean, I know that the show is called A Drink With, but
we could have prepared these in advance.
yeah, these would have been good preparation questions. We could have thought about them at length.
I recently had a drink, a martini, the driest, coldest, most delicious martini I've ever had in my life at Claridge's in London, which is very glamorous. And they somehow keep like, they don't even they don't like shake or stir the martini. I don't know, it's the coldest thing. And they cut the lemon in like this diamond shape. I don't know, it was like the most beautiful thing. And I was with my boyfriend, who I was so falling in love with at the time. And it was probably one of the nicest drinks I've had in a really long time.
perfect.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.